So what do you think? Do you think there will be some kind of apocalypse happening in the next years?
Well, so you came all the way to Canada to see me.
Yeah, I did.
That's amazing.
Yeah, pretty awesome.
It's amazing how things work out. I never would have thought I'd be sitting here with Survival Lilly in the wilderness in Canada, so that's just amazing.
It's funny because I've watched your videos so long, but this is the first time that we really see each other in person. So, but it feels like I know you for a long time.
Well, that's what happens when you watch somebody on YouTube for a while, and you finally do meet them, and they're just like how you thought they were going to be. That's kind of how it was when I met you there at the airport. It was like, yeah, that's Survival Lilly, yeah. So what I've noticed with you is that you're really minimalist when it comes to the gear that you bring out, even though you don't necessarily have to be. And just for the record, guys, the reason why the fire is raging is because we just threw some birch bark in there. It's going to chill out in a minute, so we're not like spending our wood that fast. It's just we found a lot of birch bark today, so we're going to burn it. So why you have all this survival gear that you've accumulated over the years?
Yep.
Why then do you do things so minimalist?
The thing is, I'm pretty thin and I can't take so much weight in the backpack. And I always like to go lightweight. So this is the reason why I always take the lightest gear. So for example, you have a tent with you, which is awesome. I love tents, but they usually weigh over 1 kilogram, right? Or maybe sometimes over 2 kilograms.
Yeah, usually between 2 to 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my top over there has only 800 grams, but it's saving up a lot of weight,
Yeah.
And you're really strong and you can carry a big rucksack, but I can't carry so much.
Thank you.
And this is, yeah, he's the Canadian Schwarzenegger.
Yeah. Not quite, but yeah. Getting there.
Yeah, this is the main reason why I always try to go lightweight. And then you start to cut out stuff that you don't really need.
I think that's the big thing, is finding what you need and just bringing that out, and not having all the extras, like the things that you might only use once the whole trip, but they're going to weigh 2 to 3 pounds or something like that. Is it really worth carrying those out?
Yeah.
Now, I mean, right now we're in boats, kayaks, which can hold a lot of weight. So
yeah, that's true.
we, in this situation, we probably could have brought even more gear. But what I found personally is that too much gear in the bush it makes for a more pleasurable experience to a certain extent. But then it just creates more clutter, and you have to organize it, and you're always wondering if you've lost something.
Yeah, and it also slows you down when you're packing up your stuff.
When you're packing, yeah.
So
There's something to be said about that. Now, the only place where I think we would disagree is in terms of the shelter. Like you're a big fan of the A-frame shelter, and I'm a big fan of that tent behind me. Because it's easy, it keeps the bugs out, and I don't know, I guess I'm more of a camper than a bushcrafter, so.
yeah, that's all right though.
Yeah.
So if I was going car camping where the weight doesn't matter at all, then I probably would pack a tent also. Yeah. But I was a little bit limited in my weight when I came here from Europe, because I only could take with me a suitcase of 23 kilograms.
Right.
So yeah, I had to throw out a couple of things.
That said, though, I did offer to bring a tent for you,
Oh yeah.
and you declined.
Right. Yeah, I know.
So there must be I think you're a sucker for punishment.
Maybe, or maybe I just don't want to have so much stuff, And also,
Even though you knew we could bring a lot of stuff, I think you still are. I think you're sort of masochistic in a way with this bushcraft stuff.
I don't know. It's not
Because-
masochistic. I know that this works as well. So
Yeah. Well,
It's just
I
a
don't know
different
many
setup.
people, maybe Joe Robinet Bushcraft, who will sleep in the Canadian wilderness without a bug net for the first night.
yeah,
And, we got rained on, and your tarp you were 2 feet off the ground. And man, like she's the real deal. If you had advice for a person who was just starting out, wanting to learn more about the wilderness and wanting to get into this whole survival thing and camping and whatever, what would be a few tips that you would give them to get started? Maybe just in terms of mindset and even gear recommendations.
Yeah, when I started out, actually a lot of my gear was junk, but I didn't know it until I tried it out in the wilderness. And then I found out which gear works and which doesn't. So some people, they just buy camping stuff, but they never go out. And then they might have some gear which is not working, but they don't know it. So you really have to try out your gear in the wilderness. So if you get a new tent or tarp or whatever, rucksack, then you really should try it out and really go out there.
Yeah.
Then you will see if it works or not.
Don't be afraid to get it dirty.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to break it in.
And then another thing is that a lot of people, they are buying fire steels, but they've never tried it out before. And then they fail in the wilderness because they never really experienced how you really do it, you know. So some people fail with the fire steel.
Yeah.
And they think, yeah, they have to get one because now it's so fancy to have one. And if you're using matches in the lighter, then you are not bushcrafty enough.
Yeah.
But I can always recommend to people that they take at least 3 different techniques of making a fire with them. Matches, lighter, and maybe a fire steel.
I've heard Black Scout Survival before. He said something about playing bushcraft versus doing bushcraft. And the distinction was that, you know, playing bushcraft is doing things when you don't necessarily need to do them, and it's a setback to you. Whereas doing bushcraft is, you know, doing it like yourself and other people because you like doing it, you know, you enjoy it. Do you agree with that, or?
Yeah, so for me, bushcraft is more like minimalistic camping, where you take out just a minimal kit and then the rest you just craft from Mother Nature.
And I noticed too, in camping with you for a few days, a lot of the foods you eat are organic. You know, you're not like me. I mean, I'm living off a mountain house off here, and you know, I got my cell phone, and I've just brought civilization with me pretty much because I'm a prepper, right? So that's what preparedness is all about, coming prepared. So I'm prepared through and through.
But how did you become a prepper?
How did I become a prepper? That's a good question.
And why?
Well, I just think, you know, I've seen how vulnerable we are as human beings and how soft civilization has made us. And I also realized that were something bad to happen, I was completely naive and hopeless to help myself, my family, my friends, anybody. So the main thing was that realizing how much I depended on technology in order to survive. And I still do, obviously, but I'm migrating towards a more homesteading lifestyle where I'm being more self-reliant.
So that's your plan for the future?
That is my plan for the
Homesteading.
future, yeah.
Okay, cool.
And I think you have a similar plan for the future.
Yeah, I recently started a gardening channel because it really interests me, and you know, I'm a survivalist and I always will be, but as I'm getting older, I feel that my interest is shifting towards homesteading, gardening, and also prepping. So my dream would be to have a farm which is self-reliant and sustainable, but unfortunately I lack the money to buy something like that.
What do you think is the thing that binds survivalists, bushcrafters, preppers, homesteaders together? Why do you think we all watch each other's channels?
I think it's because we want to be self-reliant. That's the common thing that we have.
Because there is still a big difference between, you know, like somebody like Dave Canterbury or yourself who goes out into the wilderness with very minimal stuff, and the all-American prepper who's just, you know, buying every possible gun he can get his hands on to prepare for the end all of all days. But even though those things seem to be worlds apart in a way, there's still a common theme there. You know,
I think it's self-reliance.
Self-reliance, yeah. I think maybe with your emphasis is more how can I get what I need from the environment, whereas you know, All American Prepper is all about how can I stockpile as much stuff. Do you think there's a laziness in just wanting to buy stuff but not wanting to use it and go and test it and learn the skills? Or what do you think it is that prevents people?
I think a lot of people think they do not have to test it. They trust the manufacturer too much.
If you had a criticism of preppers, what would it be?
I think they are focusing too much on storing food. They should more focus on growing food, you know, because it's infinite.
Yeah. And you know what? It's amazing how fast food will go when you start eating it.
Yeah.
Like when you see your stockpiles, you know, you have 2 years, 3 years worth of food. But once you start eating that food and other people around you start eating that food, it really starts to go fast.
Yeah. I think people should get more into gardening because, you know, we're getting so many people now in the next years on the planet. And we really have to think about how we will feed ourselves.
Yeah.
So
Well, I think it's mainly in developing countries, but
yeah, but still, you know,
it's going to put a strain on the global food supply. And yeah, I have a little garden going this year, and for me, I'm just starting out simple with calories. Like, you know, for a prepper, I think potatoes are probably the best food because you can do so much with them. They're high in calories. They don't have all the nutritional value, but calories are king when it comes to not dying, right? So, like you think of the Irish potato famine, you know, incidents like that throughout history where the staple crop failed, like the corn crops in ancient Aztecs, Mayans, or whatever they were. And, you know, so that's what I'm trying to do this year anyways. What is your take on this trip so far? And is there anything you would have brought that you didn't bring?
Yeah. So unfortunately, I thought when I was coming here, it had like 37 degrees Celsius in Europe. It was so hot. And then, unfortunately, I came with my sneakers instead of my Doc Martens. That was my biggest mistake so far. And yesterday I was really miserable because my feet were getting so wet and cold. And then I had to take some rubber boots and put it over my socks so that my feet stay dry, because this shoe is somehow, you know, semi-permeable.
Yeah.
And so it was constantly wet, and that was my biggest mistake. So I didn't know why I didn't bring my Doc Martens. Maybe because of the weight limit of the airplane. But so if I do this trip again, only with Doc Martens.
Yeah. And I might even go one step further and recommend some muck boots.
Yeah.
Because these things are indispensable around here. Like you can climb with them, you can hike with them, you can go into the water. It's just the perfect boot, in my opinion.
They're really nice, actually.
Yeah.
So
that would be one thing I would recommend to anybody if you're planning on doing like camping in a place like this with lots of water, is get some rubber boots, like well-made rubber boots. What else can you tell people about camping on a river that you've learned from this trip?
Well, it was not so easy to find a good camping spot here because the cliffs are so steep.
Yes.
And and also if you are kayaking on such a big river, it's hard to get to the other side, so it's really hard work.
Right.
And
when the current is going, so you have a cross current and you're trying to get across as fast as possible. It's almost impossible.
So I'm not the biggest kayaker because in Austria we do not have a lot of big rivers like this, you know. So for me this was a new learning experience. I'm pretty happy that I...
And you know, it was for me too. I've done this river before, but it was more south, and it's a little easier.
Yeah.
One of the big things I have an appreciation for now is the speed at which the river is moving. And you see a moving river and you think, oh yeah, I could just pull over whenever I want. But you know, if the river is going to smash you into the side of the banks, you know, at a pretty fast speed, and you can damage your boat, and yeah, like you said, the mud and the cliffs and not having a place to camp. You know, I thought we would have all kinds of places to camp, but you know, it's really every 10, 15 kilometers that you find an ideal spot to actually camp where the bugs aren't bad and there's a nice breeze. And
what did you learn about anchors today?
Oh yeah, anchors. So I tried to make an anchor for the kayak because I wanted to fish in this one spot where the current isn't as strong. And I learned that an anchor needs to have some kind of grip to grab the bottom, because it doesn't matter how big the rock is, if the current's strong enough, your boat's going to drag it. So, yeah, it was, needless to say, it was pretty silly how it turned out. And I ended up floating down the river, and I had to bring the rock back up into the boat, save my paracord, and, you know, roll back to shore against the current. And so it just didn't work out. Yeah. So, you know, if you're going to make an anchor, make it something jagged that's going to catch on to something. That's what you want. What are some of the biggest misconceptions of YouTubers by our audiences and maybe even fellow YouTubers? Particularly people in our genre, survival preparedness.
Yeah, I think some people believe that we make millions off of YouTube, which is not true. So I think most of the YouTubers just earn a normal salary.
Yeah.
So they all think we earn millions, but that's not true at all.
Yeah, and you say millions, but not even close to millions.
Not
right?
even close.
Yeah. I don't think any YouTuber, even the ones who have over 1 million subscribers now, are you know,
they're not rich,
making decent livings. So
Sure.
I think people's idea is that we work less for more, which really isn't true.
No, people don't realize that cutting videos is so much work, right? So it's maybe awesome to go camping and record it, but there's much more work behind it because you have to cut the video, which can take hours and hours.
Yeah.
It's really hard work. Yeah.
Like while they're watching this video, they're going to be seeing a bunch of scenes.
Yeah.
And the thing I've noticed with video is the more perfect it is, the less people notice.
Yeah.
So if you're doing a jump cut scene every 2 or 3 seconds and it's very smooth, nobody's going to ever notice, and you know, they'll make it look easy. But somebody had to go and set that camera up, and you know, and it really does take the joy out of what you're doing in a way, doesn't it? So
It's work.
doing what you do is hard enough as is. Having to record it is another level of difficulty.
Yeah.
You know, like having this to live out here is challenging, but then to record yourself doing it for the world,
Yeah.
that's even harder.
I think so too.
All right, so the only thing that's not minimalist about Lily is her liking for Canadian bonfires.
Yeah.
This is the Apple One. It's a knife that you created. I've been using it for batoning, striking fire steel, some feather sticking. I really enjoy it. I like how it feels in the hand. I'm going to do a more in-depth video review of it soon. There'll be a link to that in the description. But I'm thinking about the name. Why did you call it the Apple One?
Because it's the short form for Apocalypse One. So if I only
I
had,
can relate to that.
Yeah, if I only had one knife or one cutting tool for the apocalypse, so if I didn't have any saw or, I don't know, hatchet or axe, let's say if I only had one knife, then I would take this one because it's stable, it's robust, and still gets the job done.
Yeah, I was using this to baton wood today, and I was amazed at how well it batons. And I'm not really a batoning person. The Apple One, then, the Apocalypse One, you're a bit of a prepper, obviously, then. So is that something that you believe could happen? That, you know, there could be a end of the world scenario? How likely do you think that is to happen?
Well, everything is possible. I don't think it's going to happen in our lifetimes, though. At least that's what I'm hoping, yeah. But it's possible, you know, there are so many threats to the mankind, natural threats, but also man-made threats, and it only needs another asteroid to throw us back into Stone Age, you know. So it's not a question of if, but a question of when. When is the next asteroid striking the Earth? When is the next supervolcano breaking out? So, and even if that doesn't happen, you know, sooner or later, maybe there's another war going on using nuclear weapons, maybe. So, who knows? Or maybe it's not something like this. Maybe it's just superbugs, yeah? More and more bacteria are resistant against antibiotics. So that can take out, you know, a lot of people. Pandemic, everything can happen. So what do you think? Do you think there will be some kind of apocalypse happening in the next years?
Well, you know, it depends on what day of the week it is. There's days of the week when I do have this feeling, and I know feelings aren't facts, but I have this instinct, this intuition that something is going to happen because there's just so many things that could happen, and human beings are so fallible, they're so prone to making mistakes that something is bound to happen. At the same time, I realize the system is resilient. Human beings, civilizations have come and gone, and there's a good chance that nothing will happen. But just the fact that it can happen, lots of people don't believe it can happen, which I think is very naive. I don't necessarily think it will happen, but I do know that it can happen. I do know that are many situations that could cause a cascading effect throughout society, that could cause a grid down situation that we probably wouldn't bounce back for, at least to this level where we're at right now, for a long, long time. And a lot of people don't think that can happen because they've always had electricity. You know, they've always had running water and a heating system in their home. They don't know anything but that. I would never say it's going to happen at this particular time. I will say some things are going to happen, like, you know, a financial crisis is going to happen at some point. A pandemic is going to happen at some point. A food crisis, a climate crisis, all these things are going to happen at some point. But when, who knows?
Yeah, and even at a smaller scale, you know, if you live in Florida, you know that there will be a hurricane coming every year. So even if you're not the biggest prepper, you at least should have a small Bugout bag.
For sure.
So even if it's not the full-on apocalypse, in a small scale, like floodings, wildfires, it's always possible that something like this happens. Even small, like Fukushima and something like that, you know?
And, you know, I think there is a difference between prepping for those local disasters and prepping for a long-term grid down, because you know, I would never invest as much time as I do into this if it was just for prepping for a local, you know, like a forest fire, you know. So there's definitely a distinction. I think there's a line that gets crossed in prepping for global events as opposed to regional ones. I just think that human nature hasn't changed in as many years. If you look at some of the crimes that are committed nowadays, some of the wars that are still being fought, I don't think human nature has fundamentally changed, yet we have this delusion that it has. I'm sure we're evolving to some extent, but I don't think we're as evolved as we think we are.
I think it's not the same anymore as in medieval times. So people they won't kill you for €1 or something, Maybe in...
Do you think they killed people for 1 gold coin back then?
Yeah, probably. I think they were pretty wild back then.
I've heard conflicting theories of that, but you know, it's possible that people were more brutal. War was definitely more, you know, face to face.
Like back then, if you killed a lot of people, you were a hero. So that's...
Depending on the context, I think.
Yeah.
Like, back then they had you know, like combat, it was man to man. There was no flying planes and never seeing the people that you're slaughtering. We still have that, it's just more remote. But there's a difference though, because back then you might actually see several people get killed in your lifetime, but now you see it 50 million times in a video game, but it's all fake.
Yeah, okay.
So what is the, you know, is there a difference? I don't know. Some people think we're more desensitized now. In a lot of ways, our social systems have evolved, but technology has evolved exponentially, whereas that has evolved linearly. So that's been a linear development where, yeah, we've made some progress here and there. Like, you know, we don't chop people's hand off now if they're stealing.
Yeah, exactly.
But, you know, we're still bombing villages and lots of innocent civilians are dying and this and that. And, you know, there's still a lot of things in the world which you could argue are, which could be fixed but aren't being fixed because of greed or whatever the case might be. So, but we are evolving. But technology, on the other hand, I mean, you could never imagine in the medieval times, having something like this in your pocket that,
Yeah.
that could give you all the information and communicate with anybody on the planet instantly.
Yeah, it's,
People mistake that evolution for the evolution of our, conduct with one another. But you look at all the mass shootings, the carnage is still there, the underlying primate is still there.
yeah, it's still here, yeah,
And
for sure.
and that's part of the reason why I prep too, is because I know that if the civility ever went out the window, people are going to return to being very selfish and animalistic. They
Yeah,
have to be.
I think so. I have to agree with this. Right now the system is working because we have laws and we believe in the laws. Everyone agrees and believes in the laws, and that's
Yeah.
why it's working.
And a lot of people have been conditioned to it since they were born, that
Yeah.
this is normal, right?
Yeah.
So they don't know anything but this.
So I, as a woman, don't want to live in medieval times. I rather live in this time where I'm protected by the law,
Yeah, the law definitely, protects lots of people.
Yeah.
People who can't protect themselves. So, yeah, there's definitely, without rule of law is a scary thought for a lot of people. And for everybody, it should be a scary thought. What are your thoughts on primitive technology?
Yeah, I really like him. His videos are great, and he's making some really awesome houses in the wild just by using a stone axe and everything. So
Pretty
it's amazing how much time he puts into his channel, into his videos, and he definitely deserves his subs and the views. So I'm really happy for him that it's working out for him. But a lot of people confuse his channel with survival, because actually the thing that he's doing is not survival. In a survival situation, you would not build a hut which takes you 1 month to build. So people are confusing primitive reenactment with survival.
That's a good way of calling it primitive reenactment. I like
Yeah.
that.
That's what he's doing. But sometimes he's making survival videos. So
Right.
the sling and the bow that he was building, that's survival. And the fish trap.
He's kind of showing you what you can do after you have your water, your food,
Yeah, it's
and
more
all your
long-term.
basics. taken
Long-term
care of.
Stone Age living.
Right.
Yeah, I like it. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's nice to watch, but it's not something you would really practically ever do in a survival situation.
Not really, no.
Because most people's survival situations are going to be, you go on a camping trip and you get lost in the woods, or
Yeah.
and you're not going to start making mud bricks.
No.
You're lost in the woods to
No.
build a chimney to make, I don't know. What's
Yeah,
he
or
making?
even the clay jugs that he's making, they need like 7 days to dry out before you can put them into the fire.
Right.
So you can't make those in a survival situation, because in a survival situation you need a pot right away.
Right away.
And not, you cannot wait 7 days
Yeah.
for a earthenware jug.
You said something the other day about going into survival mode, because, there was a couple of times throughout this trip where we were uncertain as to what we were getting ourselves into. And you had mentioned this phrase, survival mode. And that's something I've been thinking about for the last couple of days, is there is a shift in the thinking when you realize that you're in a situation where you could die, and you may have to start rationing supplies, looking for water, looking for shelter, trying to make a fire. There's a difference between making a fire because you want to make a fire and needing to make a fire
Yeah.
so you
that's
don't
true.
freeze to death.
Yeah.
What is survival mode for you? What is that all about?
Yeah, I don't know. When I'm in the wilderness for a couple of days, I just don't feel my weaknesses so much anymore in terms of being tired, right? So when I came to here, actually I was pretty sick and my thyroid was acting up again, and I wasn't sure if I could do it. But then when I get into the situation, it's like my body is somehow, I don't know, just focusing on the task.
It
and
forgets the illness.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's a survival mode. I don't know how else to call it. Maybe it's adrenaline or endorphins or something from the exercise. I don't know.
well, we kind of had a bit of a discussion that was similar to this the other night about how when a woman is pregnant, she's more immune to certain illnesses. And it's almost like when you have a task that's a life or death thing to focus on, it's amazing how psychosomatic some of the problems are, even illnesses are that we face, like, you know, just putting thought into them. So do you think there's something psychosomatic then with regards to some of the illnesses and the disorders that people have that can be remedied by putting themselves at a disadvantage in the environment and having to struggle a bit?
Yeah, with some illnesses, yes. Not with all, but with some. I think that might cure them a little bit.
I've often thought that for mental health, for a lot of people, depression, anxiety, addictions, that coming out here and doing something like this would be a great way to reset their minds
For sure.
to what's important.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that. You can do much more with your body than you think. Right?
Absolutely.
So yesterday we had a pretty hard day. We were paddling a lot and it was really exhausting, but I could still do it, you know?
Yeah.
I thought I wouldn't be in the shape for it, but if you have to, you can.
Yeah, I mean, you had probably only a few hours sleep, and so did I.
Jet lag.
Jet lag on top of it. So you were way, you know, under your quota for sleep. And we came out and we paddled the heck out of it for hours and hours. And then we, you know, you probably napped for about 20 minutes. It rained. We got firewood. We stayed up till probably 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
And you only slept 5 hours the next night. It's
Yeah,
like,
I know.
and you're still going. And you're a person who sleeps a lot.
Yeah, I know.
So, you know, that just goes to show survival mode's a real thing.
Yeah, that's a real
And
thing.
so maybe, you know, a reassuring idea for people is that if you do struggle with health problems, and, you know, I'm not giving you any medical advice, but if you do struggle with things like that, maybe getting out, doing some stuff will reinvigorate you and revitalize you.
Yeah.
You've been doing this for 8 years, right? Has technology changed the way you do things out here?
Not
Changed your approach to things? No?
I don't think so. No.
Because I've noticed myself too, there is definitely that social media addiction.
Yeah.
And
True.
I use the excuse that I'm looking for a cell signal to tell people where we are for safety, but really I'm checking Instagram, right? So it just is what it is. We all would be doing it.
Yeah.
And even though I don't even really like Instagram, I still check it for some reason.
Yeah,
it's
I don't
just
know.
an addiction.
Yeah.
So what do you think of Canada so far?
I love it.
Yeah?
You know, in Europe we don't have the real wilderness anymore that you have here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's in Europe we have a cultural landscape. We have some fields, some small forests and houses, and that's it.
Yeah.
But we don't have this. I mean, this is amazing. So, yeah, Canada is one of my favorite countries.
It's big. Yeah, it's big and
big.
it's wild.
Wild. You have a lot of trees.
Lots of trees. That's
So
all
many
we have.
trees.
Trees, rocks, grass,
Lakes,
lakes,
rivers,
water. Yeah.
fish in the river.
And for most of the year, snow
Snow.
and cold. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, next time we'll have to find another place. We'll do some survival in Austria or something like that.
Yeah.
We'll
There's not
we'll go
much to survive on.
survive downtown with
Yeah.
no money or something. See how long we can make it. Anyways, well, we should probably get some shut-eye here because we got a bit of paddling to do tomorrow, and I'm really not wanting to leave this spot though, because this is the most beautiful spot that I think we've had all trip. We have fresh water coming in here from the creek, sort of. We have flat ground. We had a little fishing pond here, which didn't really materialize in anything, but yeah, and we have
it's
a
really
great
good.
view that you guys can't see.
Life is good.
Life is beautiful right now.
Yeah.
All right, guys, don't forget to subscribe to Survival Lilly's channel and check out the Apple One knife. I'll post a link in the description if you want to get one. I'm going to do a more detailed review in the future. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for bringing me.
Right on.
Bye, guys.
The best way to support this YouTube channel is to support yourself by gearing up through canadianpreparedness.com or bugoutroll.ca. Premium quality gear at the best possible price using the incredibly secure and easy to use Shopify platform. We offer free shipping to the United States for orders over $200 USD and free shipping to Canada over $75. So support the channel by supporting yourself.